Dr. Fred, I would like to welcome you to our multimedia center at our university, Caucasus International University. For us, it's a great proud to have you with us. And I have some questions which I would like to just forward it to you. First of all, as a key specialist in Caucasus studies from in Euro-Atlantic security expertise field of studies, what is your expectations, evaluations of the general of the Caucasus regional security? How do you evaluate this security environment in the region?
Well, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, but I think it would be reflected by very many other analysts, if not policymakers, is the feeling that the ongoing conflicts, frozen and not so frozen conflicts in the region, prevent each of the countries from developing further economically and socially. And so the more attention that is spent on the neighbors, whether they are actually hostile or not, is actually detracting from the progress that each of the countries could make. And I'm sure you've noticed that in the region there's many areas to improve. You see it in your own media.
The second question just links with about what are the main hampering obstacles and hampering points which prevents a region to level as like a stable and democratic oriented area in world politics?
I think that the policymakers may put too much stock in, how can I put it, in what the other sides are doing rather than what they themselves could do for their own sides. This perpetual blame game is not helping anybody. What the international community could do and the Euro-Atlantic powers could do, of course, it depends on their own interests and their strategic interests in the region. But I believe that if they are to be serious mediators, such as in the Minsk group or the Geneva format, there needs to be resources attached to the mediation effort. For example, if two sides are unable to come to an agreement, whether it's over Nagorno-Karabakh, on the status of Abkhazia or South Ossetia, or the future of all these parties, I believe that the mediators should help materially, if necessary, should help materially the parties to come to agreement. That this is why you need mediators such with the size of Russia or even the United States or France, as the case may be, because these are countries with resources, they have influence, and they should actually put their influence towards the resolution of the conflict.
Of course, being a Georgian, I cannot just discord, and I cannot even just not have opportunity to ask you about Georgia-NATO partnership and about Georgia's maybe membership opportunities, possibilities to become a full member of the NATO, mostly in prior to the NATO Brussels summits, which was going to be held in July 11-12 in Brussels.
The disturbing factor is that as successive summits go by, unfortunately the NATO summit declarations seem to indicate that Georgia and Ukraine's membership into NATO seems to be receding in the background. Georgia is still mentioned in the declarations, post-summit declarations. It is still very, very much a part of the alliance's priorities. Of course, here now I speak on my own behalf and not of NATO. But the fact is that you can materially see that the alliance seems to be putting less and less stock in that particular plan. That doesn't mean, however, that Georgia cannot be a very, very strong partner with the alliance, and it remains a strong partner. Georgia is still very well connected through its IPAP, Individual Partnership Action Plan program, part of which is the Defense Education Enhancement Program, which I manage from the Partnership for Peace Consortium side, and that is a connection that remains valid for both sides. However, there are many impediments for Georgia's accession to NATO, and namely the continuing frozen conflicts with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. As you can expect, the alliance will not enlarge into a country that is experiencing difficulties with its minorities, or which has not full sovereign control over its territory, and which has difficult relationships with its neighbors. That goes for Georgia, that goes for other countries as well, which needed to meet certain conditions. Just lately, we can anticipate that the next member of NATO might be Macedonia, which has recently solved, with the help of Greece, a long-standing dispute over its name. So one must, if you're thinking about the long term, one must wonder what concessions must be made by Georgia in order to make the currently difficult possible. And that may mean that it may require a sacrifice of some sort, the way that the Macedonians have very courageously done. They have accepted that their names should now be Northern Macedonia and not Macedonia. And this may be, as long as Georgia will not be able to compromise on some of these things, I'm afraid that Georgian membership of NATO might be out of reach.
Dr. Labarre, you mentioned about PFP consortium. Can you just give you more in details what the institution is and how it functions? And what are the main just about goals and missions and how this institution promotes dialogue between the member countries and strategic partners?
The Partnership for Peace Consortium of Defense Academies and Security Studies Institutes is exactly that. It's an informal collection of up to nearly 800 academies and security studies institutes in the Euro-Atlantic area. This association actually works through study groups and working groups on matters of military education and reform of defense and security sectors. It is also, in addition to producing seminal works and curriculum and educational materials available for all of NATO and all of the partners, it is also a Track 2 diplomacy forum. Some of the vehicles of this Track 2 diplomacy forum is, as you just mentioned, the Regional Stability in the South Caucasus Study Group, which has rejoined its activities in 2012.
So you are from Canada, and in Georgia, unfortunately, few of us knows about what is Canada. And as Canadians, can you just say something about how Canada contributes in promoting stability and security in global level, and what can you say about the Georgian-Canadian relationship?
There's not much I can say, unfortunately. I'm certain that Canada is fully supportive of Georgia's security and also territorial integrity. Of that there is no doubt. It manifests this through support through the Georgian programs that exist with NATO. In terms of what Canada has done or can do, well, that's our own path, which is very much dictated by our neighbors to the south. As much as Georgia has its neighbor to the north and to the south, and the way we solve problems, the way we interact with those neighbors is very particular to us. Canada is a young country, only barely 151 years old, and we are mostly a nation of immigrants. So we are a country that has learned, I mean, we have immigrants that have fled conflict zones or poverty throughout our history. So when they come to Canada, they come with a different attitude. They come with an attitude of building and of restarting anew. And the attitudes that follow with that are much more harmonious, I would say, than in other countries where migrations are accidental or incidental to neighboring crises. People who come to Canada come by choice. We are a nation that has basically supported the efforts of Great Britain in the First and Second World War. We were there when the first shots were fired in both cases, and we were there at the end. And this has forged our nation. In many ways, the First World War especially has forged Canadian unity. After this extremely demanding effort, at the time of the Second World War, we were barely 13 million people in a country that occupies 1/7 of the globe at the time. This was a significant sacrifice of blood and treasure. And it was felt as the Cold War loomed that Canada would make a better contribution to international security and regional security by engaging in peacekeeping. And that is a tradition that has endured until, certainly until 9/11, where peacekeeping needed to be supplemented with peace enforcement and more muscular measures. And there again, Canada has been standing shoulder to shoulder with the United States and other countries in Afghanistan, and we have proved our mettle in the field. Although our contribution was small compared to that of Georgia, we have nevertheless earned praise, and we unfortunately have had to resort to more muscular methods to explain to our adversaries that their way of behaving had no place in the post-Cold War world, and in a world where we want to see freedom and opportunity be present for everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Labarre, for your precise and quite professional answers. And I would like to welcome you again to Georgia, and looking forward to seeing you again in Tbilisi. Thank you.
Certainly, it's a privilege. Thank you very much.